Hello, good morning. Today our guest is Dr. Matt Teichman. Hello, Matt. How are you doing?
Hi, awesome, thanks.
All right, so you have a degree in philosophy, right?
Yes, I did a PhD in philosophy at the University of Chicago, one of my way too many degrees.
Exactly. I looked at your CV. You like
Yes,
do
I'm
you,
like the
what?
opposite of Brian Kaplan.
Yeah, you really like to study. You have a degree in philosophy. Did you also study computer science?
Yes, after I finished my PhD in philosophy, I did a master's in computer science, and that's a program that I now teach in.
And you also did a degree in film studies.
Right, so that was PhD number one. I started a PhD in cinema studies, and the field didn't totally agree with my stomach. So then I switched gears to philosophy, which ended up sitting a little bit funny in my stomach in a different way. But anyway, so I switched mid PhD. I switched disciplines mid PhD. So that's how that happened.
So, Matt, why are you so smart?
I have no idea how to answer that, but thank you for the implicit compliment.
Yeah, because when children are young, their parents say study, and you really listened. You took the study thing
That's
really
right.
seriously. All right.
Yeah.
Before
Well, the thing
we,
is, though, I study because I study for the fun of learning, and I found that that doesn't always line up with studying to like do well or like rock the exam or anything. Sometimes like there's different ways of studying. I guess I would say.
yeah, like I like to study too. So in any given week, I will read several quantitative and historical studies and books. I really like to study and do research.
Yeah, I can tell.
But
That's awesome.
yes, but at this stage, I don't know if I would get a PhD or a master's again. Not years ago, a couple years ago, I applied to do a degree. The application was successful, but for various reasons I did not travel to get the degree. But
Mm.
these days, I'm my
Was that in economics or what field was
no,
that
no,
in?
I was going to study US foreign policy. So let me tell you all the
Oh, cool.
degrees
Yeah,
that I had an interest in studying. I wanted
nice.
to study international law and international relations. I wanted to study American history because I'm interested in US foreign policy. At one point, I was about to study African studies. So I like
That's right.
to study
And you do some
many.
work on that now, haven't you done some
Yes,
work on
yes,
like pre-colonial Africa and stuff?
yes.
It sounds really interesting.
Yeah, yeah, pre-colonial Africa is compelling. Many of the older economists, if they were younger, they would be studying Africa. Like the studies on Africa are really illuminating, and I'm a big fan of James Fensky. He's one of the pioneers.
Mm.
He's a young pioneer.
That's cool. I'm gonna get a
Actually,
reading list from you after the end of this.
yes, actually, Matt, I am about to read a new paper on elite numeracy, violence, and human capital development in pre-colonial Africa. Well, it's not just pre-colonial Africa, it's from pre-colonial Africa to the 21st, to the 20th century. So I'm really interested in African history. And as someone who is fond of linguistics, maybe you should study African dialects.
Absolutely, yeah. So I linguistics was one of my undergrad majors. I've always been a big fan. And my PhD research in philosophy was kind of interdisciplinary. So I had one linguistics professor as one supervisor, and I had a philosophy professor as another supervisor. So it's kind of little bit half linguistics, half philosophy. And then after I finished my PhD, before I switched into more techie computery stuff, I taught introductory linguistics and philosophy full time in the U Chicago Humanities Corps. So anyway, yeah, big fan of linguistics, and I think yeah, the work on African languages in particular has been totally awesome. Amazing stuff. I tried to write a paper actually on Igbo
Yes, the
when I was
Igbos.
in college. Um, that was my only brush really with African languages, but it was pretty fun as a research paper.
Yeah, because I'm interested in the interplay between language and culture. And the
Yeah,
Igbos, they are collectivistic but more individualistic than other groups in Africa. So I'm
I didn't
wondering,
know that. That's cool.
yes, the Igbos actually are more individualistic than their African
Mm-hmm.
peers. And like the Jews, they're always migrating. So there are several
Mm-hmm.
studies analyzing how the Igbos responded to colonialism. They were actually quite militant. So there was
Mm-hmm.
the Biafra Conference, which is post-colonial, and various pre-colonial wars. So the Igbos are usually militant. Even today, there are still
Mm-hmm.
political issues in Nigeria surrounding the essence of the Igbo community. So studying the Igbo language would be awesome.
Yeah. Nigeria is really fascinating to me.
Yes.
I can't say it's a country I know much about, but like whenever I watch a Nigerian movie on Netflix, it's just like, I mean, I do know that like the linguistic diversity there is through the roof compared to the US. We're really monolingual here. And the sheer number of just even language families where that people are native speakers of, and the multilingualism that's required to live there, there, Kenya, India, some other places like this, I think is really cool. It's very different from my experience growing up in a monolingual country. But I also feel like, just there's so many different ethnic groups, or at least that's my impression. I don't know what I'm talking about. I just watched the movies, but like my
There's
anecdotal
several.
impression.
No, you're right. So
Right,
the Igbos and the Asa are some of the major ethnic groups in Nigeria, and then Yoruba land, studying Yoruba land is always complicated because there's so but in the past there were so many different empires and polities in Yoruba land. So whenever I study Yoruba land, I'm asking, okay, so Ibadan, what's the relationship between the Ibadan Empire and Yoruba land? Because there were just so many different groups in Yoruba land. But I watch African movies like every Sunday. Before,
awesome.
so some years ago, I develop a relationship with African movies, and watching those movies actually helped me as a student, a high school student, because the movies are quite historically accurate. Obviously, some of the themes are embellishment, but for the most part, they accurately capture the clan structure in Nigeria, or the system of marriage or ethnic tensions between the Igbos and other groups. And there's also the apprenticeship system. So the Igbos in Nigeria have an apprenticeship system that has been quite successful. And in African movies, young men usually migrate from the village to go to the city to work for a mentor. The Oga, they call him the Oga. So it's the Oga system in parts of Nigeria that are affiliated to the Igbo people. And many non-Western academics have actually studied that system. Just recently, Harvard Business Review had an article on apprenticeship in Nigeria, penned by an African.
Totally awesome.
Yeah, so I really love African movies. But when you say you watch African movies, are you talking about the indigenous African movies or African movies that are filmed abroad? So Patience Ozokor, she's a prominent African actress. So when I watch African movies, I'm really watching indigenous African actors and actresses, not the African films that are filmed abroad. Like Ini Edu, she recently starred in a prominent film. I didn't watch that film, but I watched many other indigenous African films that cater to the African market and the Black diaspora.
Yes, I would say the latter category. So, movies made in Africa by African filmmakers. I used to spend I was a film studies PhD student. So back when I was younger, I used to spend a lot more of my time watching movies than I do now. But I'll mention one of my favorite filmmakers from that period. And still my favorite is Jibril Diop Mambéty. I don't know if you ever checked any of his stuff out. He only did, like 5 or 6 movies, but two feature-length movies of his that I think whatever people who are into this like think are brilliant masterpieces would be Tuki Buki and Hyenas. But I thought he's a really amazing example of somebody who synthesizes kind of like theater of the absurd and these interesting like kind of modern drama literary influences. So like Hyenas is an adaptation of a play by I think it's Swiss playwright Friedrich Dürrenmatt, but adapted to the setting of Senegal, and like it works. He makes it click perfectly. It's this like sort of like incredible kind of political Brechtian play, like in like this like little community on the outskirts of I think it's on the outskirts. Actually, I don't remember if it's on the outskirts of Dakar. Anyway, somewhere other in Senegal. But anyway, he was an example of somebody I was like really into back in the day. Ousmane Sembène, obviously, he's like one of the reigning monarchs of like African cinema. And then I try to catch newer stuff when I can on Netflix. But I still have a lot to catch up on because there's really been so much.
You need to watch the real African movies, the African movies that are filmed in West Africa for an African audience. A completely different flavor. You need to watch those movies.
Okay, so you wouldn't consider Mambeti to be of that
Well, I'm
genre? You
not
consider to be more of it?
no.
Okay.
So people like him, they're creating films for a larger market, and that's okay. But when you watch the local films, you can digest the reality of African culture. So
I see what you're saying. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
look at Harry Potter, for instance.
Mhm.
Harry Potter depicts witchcraft. African films also depict witchcraft. Some would argue that the depiction of witchcraft is perpetuating negative stereotypes about Africa. However, I disagree because witchcraft and mysticism are part of African culture, and people will reflect their cultures in films. So if you watch an African movie commenting on witchcraft or human sacrifice, that is not perpetuating a stereotype about Africa if people affirm those beliefs.
Totally. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
I don't think it's a form of Eurocentric racism to depict witchcraft or religion in African films.
No, I mean, not
Look
if it
at
was
Harry Potter.
borrowed from those cultures in the first place.
Yeah,
Yeah.
look at Harry Potter. Harry Potter is about witchcraft. It is a multi-billion-dollar film, and you don't hear people saying, "Oh, Harry Potter is backward because it's commenting on medieval Europe when people believed in magic." No, it's a masterpiece.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, people are coming for Harry Potter these days. Coming
Maybe,
for it.
maybe it's because of J.K. Rowling.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a different thing, though.
Yeah, that's
maybe they'll come for it later because of the Witchcraft stuff.
Yeah, that's a completely different story. But the castle, Hogwarts, that castle, I was introduced to it because I have an interest in European aristocracy. So yeah, it is owned by the Duke of Northumberland. Yes, that family, they own the castle. So I was introduced to Hogwarts long before Hogwarts became an actual movie. But back to
Oh wait,
linguistics.
so you learned about the castle, and then you saw the movie. You're like, dude, this is that castle I read about.
Yeah, the Dukedom of
That's awesome.
Northumberland. Yes, they own Hogwarts. Yeah,
That's
I like.
a pleasant surprise. Huh, that's cool.
Yeah, I like to read. And interestingly, they're still rich aristocrats. But back to you and computer science.
Yes.
Why would a computer scientist study linguistics?
Oh man, you were really in my this is yeah, you're after my heart with this question. This is one of the things I've gotten kind of most interested in since finishing my PhD. So yeah, there's lots of reasons. The reason I think that people are more familiar with that a computer science will be interested in linguistics is because the big data crunching type of linguistics is very useful for lots of computer stuff. Famously for like search engines. To be able to crawl through texts written in a human language and identify the kinds of features in them that users might want to search for. So that whole kind of number crunching, big data processing side of computational linguistics is called natural language processing. And it's something that I've never studied, but that's one very big crossover that I'd love to learn about it someday, but I haven't really studied it. Another half, or the other half of computational linguistics, you could call computational semantics, and that tries to apply traditional methods from mathematical logic, theoretical computer science, and areas like that to the study of human language. So that, I guess I should also mention programming language theory, computer science. So these are sort of formal frameworks that computer scientists use to rigorously analyze the math behind programming languages. What computational semantics does, kind of in coordination with linguistics, is show us how to apply those same techniques to the languages that people speak. So effectively, what you could do is view a language like English or Igbo or Yoruba, or pick your favorite language, through the same lens that you would view a programming language like C or Python or et cetera, et cetera.
All right, then. So are you finished? Okay.
Yeah.
No,
I could go on. I don't like to ramble too much.
No, you're not rambling. So
yeah,
this show is not about me. It's about the guest. So I allow the guest to speak for as long as he so desires before I tell him to stop, because it's not really about me, and people really like it. People really like it when the guest is eloquent and he speaks.
Nice.
But what
nice.
Noam Chomsky You studied linguistics and computer science, so obviously you know Noam Chomsky. Noam Chomsky is famous. We all know him. Is ideas relating to linguistics, are they still relevant?
Yes. I don't think it's any exaggeration to say that in every mainstream linguistics department, the general approach to studying human language is within the framework outlined by Chomsky from the 50s and the 60s. That's still being continued today. That's like it's like the methodological bedrock of how we study languages, informs the way linguists kind of think of the work that they're doing in linguistics department as science. So what they're doing is they're gathering data, they're testing hypotheses, they're trying to see which hypotheses fit the data and which don't, which further predictions their hypotheses might make that might prompt them to seek more data and stuff like that. So it's very much on the model of like the scientific method. And that whole way of conceiving of the discipline, I think, was kind of like put into place by Chomsky and some of his influential students a long time ago. And it's, I think, still the dominant approach. So yeah, he's very much at the center. There's a couple like renegade linguistics departments that are trying to do stuff differently. And that's an interesting phenomenon. But like, I definitely think, yeah, the mainstream is like Chomskyan.
Yes, so there's this article. Is Chomsky's theory of language wrong? Pinker weighs in on the debate. And Pinker is critical, but he's siding with Chomsky. It's an old article from 2016.
That's interesting. Yeah. Yeah. They have like all kinds of interesting, subtle little disagreements. I think they're generally on board the same kind of perspective, but they have tons of disagreements about specific stuff. Yeah.
And for those who are unfamiliar with Chomsky's position on language, let me read. Chomsky contended that all humans possess an innate capacity for language activated in infancy by minimal environmental stimuli. He has elaborated and revised his theory of language acquisition ever since, and we call it universal grammar. Yes.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah,
yep, that's a little nugget for you. Yeah.
Yeah, it's always good to teach and not assume that people already know.
Yeah. I mean, I can try to unpack a little bit of that if you're
curious. Of course. Go ahead.
So the term universal grammar is the name of Chomsky's theory. I think it's a little bit misleading, unfortunately, because really what the empirical claim is it's a claim about like how human brains are wired. And it's a claim about how human brains are wired to be able to learn a language, to be able to natively acquire it between the ages of 0 and 13, approximately 0 and puberty. And so calling it grammar kind of makes sense, but you want to get away from the image of like, there's a grammar, like the subject has to come here and the verb has to come here. And after that, the object has to come, or like any specific like set of grammar rules that you need to learn to be able to speak any particular language properly. It's not that, according to this hypothesis, that's innate, because I mean, if you think about it, that would be nuts. Like obviously SVO, subject, verb, object, word order isn't innate because tons of languages have totally different word order. So, it's really a much more general abstract theory about the possible sets, like how the grammars of different languages can vary and can't vary. And it's a theory that narrows down the range of possible variation from what's combinatorially mathematically imaginable, like all the different possible, rules there could be for how to put words together to make sentences. It tries to narrow that range down or describe how that range is narrowed down. Because if it wasn't narrowed down from what was theoretically mathematically imaginable, there'd be too many possibilities for a kid to actually even be able to learn it. So it's the idea that like the brain has little shortcuts in it that make us good at natively acquiring language, which is indeed something that we're brilliant at, and other animals can't do. Like humans have this almost mystical, magical ability to like natively learn a language and master it like deeply, just by hearing other people around them speak it and interacting with them. So the idea is to like explain how that's possible. We're going to explain how that's possible by conjecturing that only a tiny subset of the theoretically possible languages exist, and the brain is like hardwired to assume any language that I hear as an infant is going to be part of that tiny subset. Does that sort of make sense?
Yes, but I'm going to introduce a tangential point still related to
Cool.
language. Language and development. So there is a literature asserting that there's a link between language and entrepreneurship, but I do believe that it can
Are you
evolve
thinking
to
of the Keith Chen stuff?
yes, Chen. Yes, I've read
Yeah.
Chen. Yeah, so there is a literature al along the line of the link between language and development, but I think that it should go a bit deeper to assess the comparative origins of development using language. And I'm thinking about this because I appreciate comparative sociology. In China, the word for law meant punishment. The Chinese did not really have a word for law. They had a word for punishment. The legal system was punitive. In Africa, there are words for trade and trading, but not a specific word for business because of the nature of factor endowment in Africa and the whole their trading establishments were created. And again, in some cultures, there's not a word for rationality. Rationality was introduced via colonialism or exposure to Western society. And China falls within this category. So I'm saying over time, can we really identify a link between language and development? Is it that we're being shaped by language, or is it that language is shaping us? So people are really speech. If you value entrepreneurship, you're going to write novels portraying the entrepreneur as a national hero. If you value philosophy, many of your leading characters will be philosophical. So are our economic systems being shaped by language? Just recently, I said to myself, I'm from Jamaica, and in Jamaica, we have many words to describe corruption, but I don't know if there's an indigenous word in Jamaica for success. There, in fact, yes, no, no, but I'm serious and you're laughing. So in Jamaican patois, there are words that indicate that one is accomplished, but is often negative. So you're bossy. Jamaicans would say bossy. Or well, show off is a typical English word, but there's a phrase, and I'm going to speak Jamaican patois, so just please listen. You think a shit can make patty?
Okay.
Yeah, so
Was that a
shit.
question?
No, it's Jamaican patois. That's why you're supposed to listen. Let me repeat again. You think a shit can make patty, meaning some people assume that they're better than others. So your shit, so patty in Jamaica is a meat. So it's beef. So it's a beef sandwich.
Oh, like French
And
pate? Is that kind of the
a bit similar. So you get the point.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
feces are usually brown. So if your shit can make patty, it means that you're better
Right.
than other people.
Right. The American version is like you think your shit don't stink.
Yes, you think your shit can make patty.
Yeah.
So
Awesome. I love it. I love it.
yeah, yeah. So
You send me a guidebook of like all kinds of Jamaican patois expressions
yeah,
after the episode too.
I know a Jamaican writer. I'm a big fan, and she was one of the first people in Jamaica to interview me on radio. Her name is Joan Williams. She's interested in Jamaican slangs. I know her personally. She has a book. Joan Williams. I can just send you her email, and both of you can correspond. But
Cool.
in Jamaica, words and phrasing denoting success are often critical of successful people. Yes. So I'm wondering if language structures are not only perpetuating cultural practices, but also negative economic practices in some instances. I could not, and maybe there is a word, but I am unaware. But based on my survey of Jamaican patois, the words that are positively correlated with success are still critical of successful people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
so this is right. This is a real minefield of a topic, I think.
Yeah, it's an interesting take. So even today, Richard Nisbet was not the lead author. The lead author was Ara Naren Zayan, and they did a paper comparing Westerners to non-Westerners. The Chinese, Asians were involved in the study. And the conclusion is that Westerners prefer analytical thinking versus formal thinking. So,
What's that distinction? What does that mean exactly?
So in Western society, one is expected to identify a proof for his beliefs. It goes through a particular process. The ideas are rationally applied, they're systematic and scientific. They're not sentimental. So formal versus intuitive, gut feeling.
And then the formal, what's the formal?
That's not my part. The formal part is the analytical, the logical part, and the intuitive part is the gut feeling. So even today,
so in the East, the idea is in the East, people are more intuitive.
Yeah,
West people are more formal.
They still prefer formalistic thinking. And this paper was published around 2019, 2020. It's fairly recent. But I'm not surprised, because language has an impact on us, and it shapes our heuristic. So if your culture views capitalism in a negative light or entrepreneurship in a negative light, you're going to have more words criticizing capitalism. And over time, it becomes embedded that capitalism is wrong. But I would love for someone to test this thesis.
Yes, and I think this kind of stuff is really hard to test. I don't want to be too pessimistic about it. I think it's good to be optimistic, but also like realistic. So I'm going to try to outline some of the challenges I would see it like at a high level, like hand wavy high level, for really gathering evidence for this kind of hypothesis. So there was a nickname that people sometimes give to the idea that the way you speak can condition the way you think. It's sometimes called linguistic relativity, sometimes called Whorfianism, after the amateur linguist Benjamin Lee Whorf. Roughly the thought is, it's a thought I think that anybody who's bilingual has had. It's certainly a thought I've had speaking to people in French. Like, do French people think differently from, native French speakers, that is, think differently from native English speakers? It's so a lot of people, Benjamin Lee Whorf sort of wondered about this in like the 40s. Edward Sapir, but before that, also wondered about it. And it's a very natural, intuitive thought. And since people kind of started writing about this natural, intuitive thought, people, their successors have been looking for ways to gather evidence for it. And it's really hard. And so I feel like it goes with life cycles. Every 3 years, there's like a resurgence of interest in this, and people gather like new evidence for what are sometimes called Whorfian effects, which is the fancy way to say there seems to be a difference in the way you think, depending on what your native language is.
Yes.
There's a very active debate, and we can talk more about that if you're interested, between usually linguists are typically like a bit pessimistic about this being a thing. Linguists tend to think the evidence suggests that everybody thinks the same way, no matter what your native language is. And psychologists and cognitive scientists, some anthropologists tend to be a little bit more optimistic about the idea that there could be these effects. Like where it seems like where we are now is the data suggests that there are effects, like they're statistically significant, they're observable. That's like the good part. There are some effects. The bad news is they're really tiny effects. So like one example, there's a famous study done on Russian speakers versus English speakers in recognizing shades of blue, which found that Russian speakers were like slightly faster at differentiating shades of blue that are a tiny bit different. When one's a tiny bit lighter than the others, or one's a tiny bit darker than the others. And that effect is on the one hand definitely there, but on the other hand, there's this question like, okay, well, if you're 125 milliseconds faster at recognizing a distinction between shades of, like, it's not like one party gets it wrong sometimes, or one party gets it right other times. It's like they have the same verdicts, but one's like 125 milliseconds faster. So it's very small difference. And then the question from there is like, does that actually make a difference in the way you live your life? So that's my sense of kind of where we are. Is like we've observed some differences that are definitely there, and then there's like a debate about whether they matter. whether they're just tiny, insignificant variations. And then stuff like lexicon too. One thing you want to look at is if there's just one word for something in one language and then that word is absent in the other language, that's very unlikely to have any kind of effect. So like, I don't know, we don't have the word sorry in English. I'm sorry, not I don't mean the apology one. I mean like the word for the item of clothing, the Indian item of clothing. We don't have the words, sorry in English, so we borrowed it, and now we have a new word, sorry. And then anybody who looks at this outfit, it can see what it is plainly. It's not like I can't comprehend what this is just because we don't have a word for it. No, we coin a new word for it, and now I can understand it fine. We borrow a word from another language. So what you want to look at, I think, in thinking about what are the effects of one language's lexicon versus another language's lexicon is like big systematic differences. Like they have a whole vocabulary for X in this language and not much vocabulary.
Let me give a quick example. Science. So if a culture has a vocabulary for science and this correlates of scientific research, then this will make a huge difference.
Yeah, I can't think of any research into that exact difference, but it seems intuitively plausible that there could be such an effect. If we didn't have any language for hypothesis or observation or like statistics stuff or law, scientific law or like things like that. Like observation as in the observation done in an experiment, not observation like I observed with my eyes. Measurement, if we didn't have vocabulary for measurement, it does seem intuitively plausible that if there was a language, and there are languages that don't have these types of things. I mean, every language has some kind of like, arithmetic in some form or other exists in every language, but more of these like little detailed things that we've been talking about don't exist in every language. So yeah, it does seem intuitively plausible that in that culture, it might be, there might be some difference in the way they approach or could approach science. But I don't know if any research into that.
Really well, we have books on the topic, but not major quantitative studies. So Edward Grant, he wrote The Foundation of Science in the Medieval Ages, God and Reason in the Medieval Ages, The Nature of Natural Philosophy. Edward Grant has tons of books on medieval science. And he argues that in Europe, there was natural philosophy, and natural philosophy was disentangled from theology. Interestingly, in Europe, most people studied natural philosophy and law. To study theology, one had to be brilliant because theology was a graduate degree. Whereas in Islam, there was the notion of Islamic sciences and foreign sciences. Science was not perceived as an independent unit of study separate from the rest of society. So, so maybe if a study were to be done, this study could prove some of our assumptions or disconfirm them, I don't know. But anecdotally and theoretically, we seem to be on good ground.
Yeah, right. So earlier when I said I don't know if work on this, I should have specified that I meant like quantitative data gathered, using the scientific method in like randomized control trial type of thing, like where they, really try to rigorously correct for any interfering variables. But certainly historical studies that informally look at a bunch of, look at the historical record and formulate hypotheses about the causal factors in this era of history. Yeah, definitely. That's totally interesting to look at too. So yes, I should be clear that's what I was referring to earlier.
And then on a smaller level, there's also what we call mindset. So of course, you're familiar with the literature on mindset. Some people have a fixed mindset, others are growth mindset. And we also have studies on optimism. But in the realm of speech, some are direct speakers because of their mindset. So one will say, within the next 10 years, I am going to own a tech company. So there's a big difference between
a lot of people I went to high school with would talk like that. Yeah.
Yes, be a direct speaker. There's a big difference between saying, I want to own a tech company, or I wish that I will own a tech company, and saying I am going to own the tech company. When you're a direct speaker, you're more likely to work. So when I was I'm still young, but some years ago I said, okay, I am going to get A, and I got A. I didn't say that I
Okay.
wish that I'm going to get A. I said I am going to get it.
If only I could get an A.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm not. Well, A does not necessarily mean a grade. It's an example for an objective.
Yeah.
So I wish that I'm going to get an award. So I want to get an award for writing, and I got an
want to
award.
get this cool computer.
Exactly. So when I was this was 2013. I don't do it anymore, but in Jamaica, there's an award given to writers called the Silver Pen, and I was the youngest recipient. So when I decided that I wanted to write, I said, I want to get that award. No, sorry, not I want. I will get the award, and I got it twice. Yeah, so one has to be a direct speaker.
What do you think is the causality there? That's a question I have about that. So is it that? Do you think it's that like you started talking in this way, and that was part of what helped you psych yourself into doing the kind of work that would get you the award, or do you think there was some antecedent change in the approach you took to the project itself, and then that manifested as this new way of speaking? Or do you have any way of telling?
Yeah, so it's a goal, and I like to achieve my goals. Yeah. So if I say I am going to get it, I have no option but to work to get it. It's a plan.
But then what? Okay.
It's a plan. It becomes a part of your strategy, and you work to get it. Whereas if you are saying, okay, I wish or I dream, it will always be a dream.
That's right.
It's just like entrepreneurship.
Isn't there? It seems to me that there's a further factor in there, which is like in the back of your head, you still right. You definitely want to have confidence. You really definitely want to. You don't want to undermine your ability to get the thing you're going for, via whatever, timidity or something. But on the other hand, there does need to be something in your reptile brain, like keeping you into contact with reality. So like if I was like, I will jump to the moon with my legs tonight. It seems to me like if it's combined with a really bad sense of what's a remotely realistic goal, there could be like a risk of driving yourself nuts. Because like, suppose it's a little bit far-fetched the thought experiment. We think something more realistic, but suppose you set yourself a totally ridiculous goal like that, and then you like committed to it wholeheartedly. It seems to me that like once you're never able to jump to the moon with your legs, you could be setting yourself up for some sort of like psychosis or like like deep psychological problem.
Yeah. Well, the goal has to be plausible.
Right, exactly.
That's the point.
It has to be plausible.
So I get what you're saying when you meant
yes.
I get what you say in relation to your reptile brain. Is that what you said? Your reptile brain?
Yeah, that's what I said. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's be realistic. Let's be realistic. I started to read quite early, so I would have gotten an advantage as a toddler. So when I was a toddler, in my community there was a library bus, and I would borrow books, and some of these books were non-fiction books, like books for children on Pan-Africanism. So as a young boy, I fed my appetite for learning and writing. So it's not implausible for me to say, okay, at X age I'm going to win an award for writing.
Totally. Yes.
Yeah, because right. I already had that background.
So it's like those two things are working in coordination, it seems to me. Like that, like contact with reality, where in the back of your mind you understand what's like remotely plausible, plus once you've nailed that down, like total commitment to it. Because the thing is, the reason I bring this up is that sometimes like people will read a book, I don't know, like The Power of Positive Thinking or something roughly like that, and they'll take away the message like, yes, set a goal and commit to it. But then they lack the second part. They lack the second part where like, yeah, I'm not going to set the goal of jumping to the moon with my legs. And then that like, just like, that could be, that can lead to a real psychological disaster. And so I don't know that I have any like deep point to make about this.
Well, I have some extra
I wish there was a way of
points.
sending the second message as well as the commit to it message.
Matt, I have some extra points. So there's actually an article titled the positive power of negative thinking. One has to set realistic goals, and optimism must be tempered by realism. So let's say you intend to start a business. Most businesses fail. So at some point, you're going to experience a setback. So successful people are realists. They're rational optimists,
Right.
like
Exactly.
Matt Ridley.
Exactly. Yeah.
You have to be rational.
Yeah. Right. But then there's all these cases, right, where somebody like, they don't focus on that part of the thing, and then they're like, I'm gonna borrow tons of money and I have a great idea. Maybe the idea really is great, but they have no business sense, and then they just, and they just lose all money that they raised, that capital they raised to start the business, and it's just sort of like where my brain is intuitively going.
I get you.
You know what I mean?
One has to be smart. Too much optimism will make little Johnny a loser for life.
Yeah, you're right. Optimism exactly. Optimism informed by just attention to the facts of the world or something. So optimism informed by attention, maybe is the catchphrase.
Let me give another example. Business. And we had this discussion in an email. Matt, I think that I have some multi-billion-dollar ideas. So presently,
yes, you mentioned that.
Yes, presently I'm not in the process. I'm actually doing it. I'm looking for app developers because I have multi-billion-dollar ideas. However, my optimism must be tempered by realism. If I were in America, based on my trajectory as an individual in Jamaica and the institutions that I've interacted with, despite living in Jamaica, I would have been better off because America is the venture capital mecca and also the civil society mecca. Contrary to what people say about civil society in America, the Americans are still abundant in civil society because they're always creating new institutions. So even if some studies are saying that social capital is declining or that people are bowling alone, that's the metaphor producing Robert Putnam's book, Bowling Alone. Based on the growth of businesses and institutions in America, civil society is still rich. There's actually a piece on the National Affairs website responding to this entire narrative of doom. So if I were an American, my goals would have been more realistic. But I'm from a different country, and I want to scale at a high level. So as you do know,
can I ask you what kinds of institutions we have here that you don't have in Jamaica that you think are, facilitate this kind of like creative entrepreneurship?
So the Kaufman Foundation for Entrepreneurial Research. The Kaufman Foundation is not necessarily funding business ideas, but it invests resources in entrepreneurial research. So that's one. America has more venture funds, more universities with venture funds. The Long No Foundation, they're more entrepreneurial and innovation-based foundations in America than in Jamaica.
It's interesting. It seems like the theme here is like, I don't know what's called, like something like grant or fellowship programs. Does that sound?
Yes.
Right. There's more of those.
Yeah, way more of those programs in the States than in Jamaica. There's even a venture funded program for philosophers, but you must be interested in objectivism.
Yes.
Yes, so it's financed by the fans of Ayn Rand.
Yeah.
Yes, it's financed by the friends of Ayn Rand. But yes, so America, despite the criticism, is still civil society rich.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wasn't sure at first whether you were talking about other kinds of like educational institutions, for example, or but that's I see.
Yeah. So and then in UK there is Nesta. Nesta is another entrepreneurship charity. So Western countries on average, they have more of these institutions. So if I were an American, obviously I would have encountered roadblocks, but the roadblocks would have eventually receded. And as I said before earlier, well, I didn't say this earlier, but personality is crucial. I'm fond of personality research. Westerners are high in openness, intellect, individualism, and long-term orientation. Westerners and Asians are higher in long-term orientation, and individualism is correlated with innovation, and innovative ideas are disruptive. Individualism is also correlated with intellectual autonomy. Jamaican culture is more embedded. People are less likely to deviate from the norm, and I am eccentric, really eccentric.
Is that like the opposite of openness? The term you used earlier?
Embeddedness?
The opposite of openness? Is it the
No,
opposite of
no, no,
that?
no. Embeddedness is not the opposite of openness.
No, no.
If
I mean oh, sorry. Yeah. Okay. Please
Yeah,
continue.
so when you're embedded, it means that you're invested in your culture. It does not necessarily imply that you're not open to new ideas. It gives
Okay.
greater primacy to cultural imports. So there's
Right.
also a
I can see
person.
that though, because in America there is this whole myth of like we founded a society the way it should be founded ex nihilo, kind of. That's part of the myth anyway.
Yeah, so American ideas are more flamboyant, outlandish, and I'm a outlandish person. So personality. So because of personality, again in Jamaica, I'm also at a disadvantage. Yeah, but I'm not one to
Yeah.
complain. And this is
Yeah.
why
But I think the thing you can
I'm
leverage
working on
though
a
is that
plan.
what you could leverage whatever Jamaicans are strong at, and like bring that
Yes,
to the table here. Seems to
I'm
me, right?
working a plan, but this idea is there are several. I'm focusing on two, one relating to investment and the other one relating to social media. The social media idea will blow your mind. It's so good that I just can't share it. But it's really crazy. Like it's
It would blow
super
my mind if I
crazy.
could hear it.
Yeah, but the social media idea is as crazy as hell, but it will blow your mind. But enough about
Social media needs something new. I mean, we got this same old
yes,
BS for the past 15 years.
exactly.
Like Twitter, it's basically everything. Yeah.
Yeah, but one I can share one of the ideas with you because I'm not so serious about this one. But the one that will blow
Okay.
your mind, I'm not going to share it. Influencer apps. Yeah, I won't share
Damn.
that one. Influencer apps. I did research on influencer apps, and they're all bad because none of them combine the best features of LinkedIn and Facebook. Who is an influencer? An influencer has a follower. If you create an app to facilitate a link between influencers and brands, you must create a space for fans. It makes perfect. It makes common sense. So so let me give an
So is that
example.
like Instagram combined with Patreon? Is that sort of like is that sort of the idea?
No, let me give you the idea. My idea, one of the ideas that I don't love that much, so that's why I'm sharing it. But however, if someone were to steal the idea and make billions, I wouldn't be upset because I'm all about value creation. I want to have money because I like to be independent, but most people like ideas don't love money that much. Sorry. So let me share it.
I completely agree. I think there's no freaking respect for money in like any of my circles, and it's a serious problem.
Yeah. Like I like to have it because I love research. If I were to get a lot of money, I would start a venture fund to earn more money so I could finance research.
Totally.
But
It's a
I'm not.
phrase from Colin Moriarty's podcast that I really like. I can't remember who the guest was on this episode I'm thinking of, but anyway, the phrase was something like, I'd like to get more money so that I can have more freedom.
Yes.
I'm getting more freedom for myself.
Yeah, but the idea of buying a mansion, like a 3-bedroom house is enough, but the mansion and the cars, that's just not for me. Sorry, like no, I did not been like
Wait till
for.
you have 7 kids.
If I were to have children, well, child one the most or two, but no 7 kids. But let me back to the idea.
Put them on the roof.
So my platform, I would call it the network. So this is how the network would work. You can register as a fan, an influencer, or as a brand. When you join the network is like LinkedIn. You create a professional profile so people can view the profile, especially brands. On the network, you don't have followers, you have a network. So if you follow John Brown, you become a part of his network. So John network would include 1,000 people. You don't follow people, you have endorsements. So if you like someone, you would endorse his message. That's why it's called the club. It's not the network, it's actually the club. That's the name of it, the club. Mm-hmm. And on the club, if you are an influencer, you're not only pitching directly and indirectly, but we're also going to create a platform for you to sell your data. And this is why fans must register, because when the fans register, they have to select brand preference. So you may have a brand preference for food or for fashion. We're going to collect data. So if you, let's say, for example, you post a video, we will share your recommendations and the likes, but the greater demographical data will not be shown. So let's say, for instance, that Mary from Texas likes food brands and you are a food influencer. But even though you're a food influencer, many of your followers also like gadgets. That would be a part of your data. So we'd send you that message and you're going to get the opportunity to sell it to the brand. And remember, there's a room for followers. You cannot be an influencer without a follower. So this platform would create opportunities for followers to revel in the success of the people they like. And I think it's quite doable. I feel to an extent.
Yeah.
I feel to an extent, but there are other ideas that I like more. But yes, the influencer apps are all bad. None of them are combining the best features of Facebook and LinkedIn. LinkedIn is still relevant. Even Facebook is still relevant, though people don't like it.
So what's the feature from LinkedIn that you're bringing in here?
Oh, the profiling feature. So the messaging part of LinkedIn. So you can have, well, LinkedIn is really creative. If you read LinkedIn, there's a platform for you to write articles, to talk to people, to that professional side. And for the Facebook, the following, well, we call it the network and the endorsements and the shares and the other stuff. But yes, you can't have a platform for influencers without creating a space for fans. That doesn't make any sense.
That's interesting. And would you have to like get each of these types of accounts in a specific order? Like, would you have to start as a fan and then you could transition? Sorry.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Yes. So if you become a fan, you can transition to become an influencer, but you wouldn't need to start all over again. But we want to ensure that the influencers are serious people, to vet out individuals who are not as accomplished as yet. So we're going to create an actual link. We're going to insert an actual icon so that we can select the influencers properly. We don't want people to see that they're influencers when they're not influencers. So if you're an influencer, you could share an endorsement deal or your 1 million people followership, but we want some evidence to prove that you're an influencer. Fans, they don't need any evidence, but if you're a fan, you can become an influencer if you wish, and you wouldn't force yourself to register again. Because remember, if you're an influencer, if you're a fan with a large fan base, then brands will automatically invest in your work and you'll be in a post to sell to them. So we wouldn't force you to register again.
Okay. Yeah. This is cool.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to tell you about an app that I worked on. Well, it was actually a class project, but I still think it was kind of a cool idea. It was an idea that I got from a friend of mine. Many of us, this is a little bit also more back when I was involved with academic philosophy, more involved than I am now. But a lot of us in academic philosophy were kind of frustrated with the peer review system and the system of journals, basically academic journals in the field, because it seemed like it had degenerated to the point where the only purpose pretty much that any journal was serving was as a contest. Can you get your thing in the journal? And it got to be such a pain in the butt to ever get anything accepted at a journal. Like any article that like won an award today had gotten rejected from like 20 journals before it was even considered for publication. The one that it got in and then won the award for. So just like the peer review process is just like filtering practically everything out. Lots of false negatives, in other words. And another problem with the journal system is that this is well known. A lot of people will complain about it, but just for the benefit of anyone watching, all peer review work is done for free, and it's very time consuming by random academics who just decide to do it on a volunteer basis. And that's really the work that goes into determining what gets published in a journal. And often it's hard to chase reviewers down. They don't have the time, they flake out, like online dating or whatever. And if you're the editor of a journal, you can't even it takes forever for you to even get a submission reviewed to decide if you're going to publish it or not. And the effect of this is somebody writes an article, maybe they have a cool new idea, they put in the article, but the article can't come out for 3 years because it takes forever for it to get peer reviewed. And then by the time the article comes out, it's already obsolete. So the idea behind this, app that I worked on for a class, and I was going off of I should credit the idea to Greg Salmieri. So I was going off of his idea. the big idea there is that like you should decouple access to the article from evaluation of the article. So the second the article is written, it should just be available. Everybody should be able to just get it. And then from there, if you want to do this silly little, I'm going to rank articles or whatever, we're going to have gatekeepers of the discipline rank articles, do that afterwards. And then they can award like a blue ribbon to like their favorite paper that came out, but like put the paper up and give everybody access to it just as soon as it's done. And there was further stuff to the app as well, but also addressing some other issues like creating persistent links that you can, so that when you cite a research paper in one of your other papers, the links all go back to a centralized place. And there's other stuff to do with that. But I think the fundamental idea behind it was like decouple people being able to read the paper from the muckety-mucks deciding that it's a good paper. Like those should be separate processes.
And okay, so are there plans to commercialize this app?
No, I did it as a class project, and then I talked about it to some people, and I had trouble like gaining interest in it. I had trouble getting interested in it because people thought it was too close to archive, and it is actually fairly close to archive. I think the evaluation, having experts evaluate the stuff is the main thing that's missing from archive. Archive does persistent links pretty well. It does multiple versions pretty well as well. After I had a few back and forth conversations about that, I decided, next time I write an article, I'm just gonna put it on archive.
Well, I like your idea. Your Jonathan Nee has a new book out on platforms. So many of our businesses are platforms. They're facilitating other interactions, and your idea could become a social media platform for academics and nerds and people like myself. Remember,
that's right. Academia.edu is sort of serving that purpose now, but
no, but yeah, exactly.
Sucks.
Yeah, no, that's.
By the way, that's the only private corporation, like of all time, as far as I know, that has managed to get an edu address. They got in early in the 90s before that was like before it was only academic institutions that could do it.
Yeah, academia. Well, I do like it because sometimes I get work on it for free. So the article
absolutely
may not be online, but it's on academia.edu. So I like it, but it's not a commercial business plan. But your idea has commercial value. Remember, many of these companies are not profitable, but the valuations are crazy because of the user base.
Interesting.
Yeah, look at our Rivian. Second large, the EV company. Second largest IPO, but it's not making a profit.
Oh, I'm ashamed to say I don't know what that is.
Yeah,
I mean,
Rivian is just.
I feel like I should know about all EV projects, but I guess there must be somebody at the last town conference I didn't talk to.
Oh, so you're into EV? Are you into EV?
I assume you mean emergent ventures.
No, not emergent ventures. Electronic Elon Musk EV.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, not emergent ventures.
Okay, I had the wrong acronym.
Yeah, the emergent venture is a fellowship program. That's not a business.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So no, tell me about this Elon Musk thing.
So Rivian is an EV company, and it recently did an IPO, a multi-billion-dollar IPO, but it doesn't have a profit structure. It's not making a profit. It doesn't have revenues, but it's highly valued.
Amazon didn't have a profit till AWS was created, like whatever, 25 years after. Right? Yeah.
So if you just need to demonstrate how you can make money and get a user base. If you get a user base, the valuation will be abnormal. You become a billionaire and then you sell. That's the trend. This is what I've been recognizing. So in the past, people like Henry Ford, they started a business, worked forever. Today, you get a concept, create a plan, get people to work, popularize it, get the right VC to back it, and you're a billionaire.
You don't worry about the profit part.
Exactly. You just need to get the right person to back it. Someone like a Carl Icahn or a Mark Andreessen, they back it, and you're good. The product doesn't need to be good.
But what about like downstream though? I mean, eventually we want people to actually be able to benefit from a cool thing that got made, right?
Yes. And this is why, as I noted in one of my articles for Mises, this is one of the reasons why it appears that innovation is declining. Innovation is based on
there's more and more of this kind of thing.
Innovation,
like
exactly.
Promissory, like profit.
Yeah,
or not profit. I don't know what to call it. speculation.
Yeah. You know, economic growth is driven by the smart fraction, and the literature is extensive. You can read Rinderman, Joel Mokyr, and like a million other people. The best and the brightest are responsible for driving growth. Bright people are also adept at identifying cultural trends. And if your IQ is 150 and the cultural trend is swinging to social media, you're going to create a social media based business. The only venture, yeah, the only person who's really innovating in, oh, sorry, the only person who's really investing in some radical and unusual ideas is, well, not the only, there are other people, but he's the most famous, is Wolf of Luke's Ventures, Josh Wolf. He likes to fund weird projects, and some of them are actually profitable. But most people are into the social media business or the hype business. So
yeah,
that's
amazing.
why, yeah,
amazing.
that's why it appears
I
that
feel like
innovation
this
is
is
declining.
right, exactly. I mean, I don't know. I feel like there's a little bit of like a perpetual motion machine, like event. Are we going to have profit eventually?
Yeah, but it's all about, it's the cultural mediation hypothesis, right? People identify social trends, and the present trend is social media. That's why my ideas are also related to
Okay.
social media, because that's the easy
part
way
of the
to,
motivation for you.
that's an easy way to make money.
Hmm.
Yeah, this is just an easy way to make money. So innovation is not declining, the incentives are changing. Yeah, but Matt, we have been speaking for about 1 hour, and I'm sure that you really need to go, so I'm going to let you go early.
Okay, it's been delightful.
Yeah, because you were saying that.
Happy to do it again sometime.
Yes. All right, Matt. Bye.
Okay, take care. Thanks again.
Yeah.